Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, it's time to look at the 10 biggest losses which are coming along with the rotation. We know that the rotation is coming up thick and fast. Next month, we are officially going to hit the rotation. It is official. It was announced a little while ago. We covered it, honestly, quite a bit on this channel. We hit it pretty hard. It was revealed that on September the 10th, we will be rotating. So essentially, you've got to have a regulation mark to be legal. Now, for us, it's actually regulation mark D or above. But remember, we never had regulation marks A, B, and C. Japan did, we didn't. So that's kind of a moot point. If you've got a regulation mark, you're legal. Otherwise, you ain't. Which pretty much means it's sword and shield on. That's what we're rotating to. And this is going to change things up. We've talked abstractly around the rotation, but now let's sit and make a list. Now, there are a couple cards I'm not putting on this list that some people may be expecting me to. Pokemon Communication ain't making the list. And it's not because I don't think it's a good card. I absolutely do think it is a very good card. But the fact of the matter is, we've got other Pokemon Search around at the moment. It's not that this is a bad card. It's not a bad card. It's that we are not hurting enough for Pokemon Search to warrant putting this onto the list. Similarly, Pikachu and Zekrom is not making it onto the list. Pikachu and Zekrom has been a phenomenal card for the entire time it's been out, but I think we've finally reached a stage where it's not good enough. It's very, very vulnerable to any deck that is playing Galarian Zapdos, but more than that, it has got the perfect amount of HP to either be one-hit KO'd by Rapid Strike Urshifu, while they also hit the bench, all two of them getting two-hit KO'd by Rapid Strike Urshifu. I think this was an amazing card for a long time, and it objectively was, but I think the metagame we've moved into means that, frankly, it had finally gone away. And similarly, Mewtwo and Mew. I think we've gotten to the stage where decks built around these tag teams are just not that viable anymore. Unfortunately, the lower HP and the fact they still give up free prizes, they just got to the stage where they don't match up well enough against this new breed of VMAXs. Something like a Shadow Rider Calyrex can get a one-hit KO on a Mewtwo and Mew. Something like an Ice Rider Calyrex will actually be 20 damage short, but then they're all being played with Inteleon nowadays, which will do the extra 20 damage, which means they won't be 20 damage short anymore. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I think we might have gotten to the stage where tag teams are past their best. Now, there are a few honourable mentions here, cards I want to mention quickly that unfortunately did not make the list, but are still very good cards. Karate Belt, allowing fighting Pokemon to reduce their attack cost by a fighting energy when they're behind on prizes. This is great in a Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX deck, and it will be missed. Both Gengar and Mimikyu, and Trevenant and Dusknoir, these are really good cards for psychic decks, like, for instance, your Shadow Rider Calyrex deck. Trevenant and Dusknoir does 150 damage while getting a couple cards out of their hand. Gengar and Mimikyu can use Horror House to buy a turn or Poltergeist to punish large hands. And Shadow Rider Calyrex decks will miss these. They are very, very good cards. Mallow and Lana, allowing you to switch while healing 120. Decks that like healing and can tank a hit will miss this card. Chaotic Swell is the best counter stadium we probably ever had, because you replace a stadium with it, but then the next stadium that comes down immediately gets discarded. It is a phenomenal counter stadium, and it will be missed. Giratina, being a Pokemon that can come down and start getting rid of special energy, is great, especially when you remember that it can be reused with Scoop Up Net. And then Lily's Pokédoll, which you can pop in the active to buy yourself a turn. It's kind of a Pokemon, but it doesn't give up a prize when KO'd. Clearly, it is a phenomenal card, and clearly it's one that is absolutely going to be missed. but none of them quite make it onto the list. So in at number 10, we've got Welder. And it's not really just Welder here. It's Welder, the supporter card that lets you attach 2 fire energy and draw 3 cards. But it's also Fire Crystal that lets you grab 3 fire energy from your discard pile and put them into your hand. And it is Giant Hearth, the stadium that lets you discard a card from your hand and search 2 fire energy from your deck. Put simply, if you're playing a fire deck, these cards are great. And at the moment, fire is not a particularly big typing into Pokemon TCG. The best we've got at the moment is Victini V Max, and there's a strong argument that can survive without Welder. But there will be other fire decks at some point in the future, so even though I'm putting it at number 10 now, we're going to miss it a lot more than that by the time we're done. Now, in at number 9 is Arceus and Dialga and Palkia, and it's one of those where I did not for a second think that it was going to be anywhere near this low. But the fact of the matter is, as we sit here at the moment, this is not one of the top 8 biggest losses in the game. Although, to be honest with you, a lot of the ordering of this list can be switched around as you like. Obviously, it's got that ridiculous Altered Creation GX attack. For the rest of the game, you do an extra 30 damage and take an extra prize of every KO, plus Ultimate Ray that does 150 and attaches 3 basic energy. It used to be the very best deck around with Zacian V. Recently, it's been played more with Galarian Moltres, largely to counter things like Shadow Rider Calyrex, which really is a phenomenal deck. But the fact of the matter is, this has really fallen off lately. And it suffers from the fact that it's not getting one-hit KOs, while some of these bigger VMAXs can get one-hit KOs. Let's be clear, I am in no way, shape, or form saying this is a bad card, or it's not going to be missed, or anything silly like that. It's clearly a phenomenal card that is going to be felt when it leaves the metagame. All I'm saying is that it is not the powerhouse it was a couple of months ago, and its place in the metagame is falling off fairly rapidly. In at number 8, we've got Viridian Forest, and you're going to see a lot of this on the list. A lot of the biggest cards that are going to be missed are actually going to be your trainer cards rather than your Pokemon. Or they're going to be tech Pokemon rather than attackers, because these are the things that are going to be felt, or their absence is going to be felt a lot more. Viridian Forest is a stadium card that lets you discard a card from your hand and search for a basic energy. It means that you can basically play 1 or 2 of a particular basic energy and know you're going to have access to it. In decks that really need energy drops every single turn, which is a lot to be fair, this is great for making sure you get those energy drops. To be blunt, an awful lot of decks are going to wish we had this in the coming months. In at number 7, we've got Mewtwo. Just regular old Mewtwo. Not the tag team, just Mewtwo. And it's all for the ability. The ability says that when you play it from your hand onto your bench, you may search your discard pile for a supporter card and put it on top of your deck. Now, that's not actually the end of the story. You need a way to draw it, but you can play anything like Cinccino or anything that draws cards, and that'll let you do so. So I'm not hideously worried about that. I think we'll be okay. But the fact of the matter is, this is great for recovering supporter cards, and it sees a bunch of play. And it does actually have a replacement. The replacement is Eldegoss. And Eldegoss doesn't actually put it on top of your deck, it puts it into your hand, but it also gives up 2 prizes when KO'd, and it cannot be reused using Scoop Up Net. So make no mistake about it, yes, we have a replacement in Eldegoss, but no, the replacement is not on the same level, so that's why it makes the list. Now, in at number 6, some people could see this as controversial, but I'm popping Dedenne GX. Now, the thing is, right, Dedenne GX sees a huge amount of play in a huge amount of decks, and will continue to see a huge amount of play in a huge amount of decks. Or at least it would if it wasn't being rotated. It's great. Discard your hand, draw 6 cards. It's fast, it's aggressive, it's brilliant. But it doesn't make the top 5 Because we've got Crobat V. Crobat V, when you play it from your hand onto your bench, you draw until you got 6 cards in your hand. Now, that's not the same. Dedenne lets you draw more cards, because with Dedenne, you always draw 6. With Crobat, you draw until you've got 6 cards in your hand, so you might draw 6 with an empty hand, but you might draw 1 or 2. If you really want to aggressively run through your deck, Dedenne is the best option. And it makes the list because so many decks are going to wish it stayed around because it sees so much play. But it doesn't make it into the top 5 because we've got Crobat. And in an awful lot of decks, no, Crobat is not a particularly great replacement. It's a similar card, but it is not the same. People are going to miss Dedenne, and I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be one of them. In at number 5, we've got Jirachi. I'm literally changing the order as I'm recording the video here. So Jirachi comes in at number 5. Jirachi is another great card, which has just seen a phenomenal amount of play. And the thing with Jirachi is, it was supposed to be rubbish a year ago, but the irony is that Jirachi wasn't rubbish. That opinion was rubbish. You see, ladies and gentlemen, Jirachi lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, find a trainer card, put it into your hand. Great card. And before the last rotation, we had a skateboard. And a skateboard let you retreat for 1 less energy, even if you were asleep or paralyzed. Because, yeah, Jirachi makes you go to sleep, which is awkward. And then a skateboard rotated out and a bunch of people went, oh, it's not going to be good enough anymore. And actually, for the past year, Jirachi's seen a phenomenal amount of play because you can just play it with stuff like Switch and Scoop Up Net. And no, it's not the same, but it's still been one of the very, very best consistency cards in the entire game because you can get 2 or 3 Jirachi out and then you can use this ability 2 or 3 times during your turn and just search for a whole bunch of trainers and consistency coming out of the wazoo. And now we're losing it. And an awful lot of decks are going to be very, very sad indeed. In at number 4, we've got Marshadow. And Marshadow is another one of those cards where it was really good and then it kind of fell off a bunch and now it's really good again. And we don't know how good it's going to be in the future. But it's got the ability Resetting Hole. Once during your turn before you attack, if this Pokemon's on your bench, you may discard any stadium card in play and then discard this Pokemon and all cards attached to it. So essentially what you can do is whack it down on your bench and chill, and then if your opponent ever puts a stadium into play that you don't like, you use this ability to get rid of it and you're golden. And since Chilling Reign released, we've had Path to the Peak. And Path to the Peak turns off abilities of Pokemon with rule boxes, like Shadow Rider Calyrex as an example. So essentially what you do if you're worried about Path to the Peak, you have Marshadow, you bench it, your opponent plays Path to the Peak, and you can guarantee at least 1 turn without Path to the Peak after it's played, because Marshadow will just get rid of Path to the Peak, and you are off and you are rolling. So with that borne in mind, it is going to be a card that we are absolutely going to miss. It is a card that we absolutely desperately are going to want back because it's one where we don't have a great way to get rid of stadiums now, at least nowhere near as good. In Sword and Shield 8, there is a Pumpkaboo coming that will discard a stadium in play when you play it from your hand to the bench, but that's not the same. You've got to have it in your hand in order to play, and yes, you can reuse it incidentally with Scoop Up Net, which is awesome, but what makes Marshadow so good is you can leave it on the bench. It means if your opponent is desperate for that 1 Path to the Peak turn, they literally can't have it because you just leave Marshadow sitting on the bench and you're like, checkmate, mate. Checkmate. In at number 3, we've got ORICORIO GX. And ORICORIO GX is another one of those where, frankly, we don't have a good replacement. ORICORIO GX has a great ability that lets you draw 3 cards if you had a Pokemon KO'd during your opponent's last turn. And single prize decks love this. Malamar, the kind that the lovely Antoine Boulet has been doing so well with lately, loves this. Because every time, you're playing a single prize deck, you're going to get KO'd every turn, so you just do this to keep ticking over. So you're going to be losing 3 cards every turn, and that's going to turn wins into losses. And people keep asking me, like, well, Wassy, you know, when ORICORIO goes away, what can we play instead? And the answer is, there is nothing. Like, you've got Cricketune that will draw until you've got 4 if you're active, cards in hand. But that's not the same, ladies and gentlemen. It is absolutely not the same. There is no good replacement for this, and especially single prize decks. You know, they're going to be losing out on potentially 15 card draws during the game. That is hard to come back from. In at number 2, we've got Reset Stamp. And again, these top 3 cards, there is just nothing which is even remotely close that we're going to be keeping in the format. It's just not even close. Reset Stamp forces your opponent to shuffle their hand into their deck and draw a number of cards equal to their remaining prizes. Okay. So if they've got 1 prize remaining, you can reset stamp them to 1. And then maybe combine it with something like Path to the Peak, which again is why Marshadow is so important in these exchanges. But reset stamp's going away. And this is like the ultimate comeback card. Right now, if you're looking for a big comeback, it's reset stamp. It is putting your opponent down to a 1 or 2 card hand. And like I say, maybe it's using Path to the Peak, maybe it's hand disruption like Trevenant and Dustwar. There are a bunch of different things we can do here. But my point is, it's great for buying yourself time and hurting your opponent. And it's going. And we're still going to have Marnie that can put your opponent down to a 4-card hand, but that ain't the same, ladies and gentlemen. That is not even close. When you fall behind, there are going to be dozens and dozens and dozens of games over the next few months where you are going to desperately, desperately want to have a bit of a comeback, where you are going to really need something like this. And it won't be there, ladies and gentlemen. It just won't be there. And that means that in at number 1, we've got Mew. And honestly, for me personally, the removal of Mew from the format is the thing that worries me most about post-rotation. You see, Mew is a bench barrier Pokemon. Mew protects your bench. And the problem is that when the rotation hits, we've got nothing. Like, we don't have a bad replacement. We don't have a replacement. There is nothing even remotely similar to this and the impact that it can have come post-rotation. And that's going to be a big problem. And the biggest reason why this is going to be a big problem is because of Rapid Strike Urshifu. Because Rapid Strike Urshifu can hit 120 to 2 Pokemon. It can hit 120 to 2 bench, for the example. And the problem is that if I'm playing a single prize deck, my Pokemon are going to have less than 120 HP. So I am going to need Mew. And I am not going to have it. And that is a big problem for me. Now, if I'm playing something like Malamar where I'm hitting for weakness, yeah, fine, cool, go for it. That's fine. I don't mind that at all. But, you know, this deck's like, and I'm not saying it's the most competitive deck, it's just an example. But let's go for Cherim Regidrago. 240 damage, as long as you've got 2 grass and a fire energy attached and no damage on you. 20 less damage for each damage counter on it. It's a fun single prize deck. But I need Cherim to accelerate the grass energy. But if I've got 2 Cherim down, my opponent can just KO them both off the bench in one go, and then I lose my energy acceleration and I lose. And I can't have 3 Cherim on the bench. I don't have the bench space for 3 Cherim, because I'm going to want to play stuff like Cinccino for draw power, and if I've got 2 Cinccino, my opponent can take both of them out in one go, and then I don't have any draw power, etc. There are other spreading decks around which are going to be annoying, but single prize decks for the past year or more, have basically been at the mercy of Arceus and Dialga and Palkia. And now, they're going to be at the mercy of Rapid Strike Urshifu. And if we don't get another bench barrier soon, then single prize decks are going to be at a huge disadvantage, and that is not something I like. And I honestly think that the biggest loss to the rotation this year is going to be Mew. I think it's going to be huge. Although if you wanted to argue Reset Stamp especially, or maybe ORICORIO, I wouldn't be terribly mad. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the biggest losses to rotation. That's what I'm sad is going, and what you should probably be sad is going. But as always, I want to hear from you lovely ladies and gentlemen. So let me know in the comment section which cards you're going to be sad to see go. and whether there's any you think should have been on this list. Although remember the rule, you can't just put cards on the list, you also have to take cards off to make room. Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.